If you're building a fintech solution, you know what it feels like to be busy without seeing the results you want. You're running campaigns, sending emails, posting content, pushing product updates, testing new features. There's always another initiative to launch, another metric to chase, another fire to put out. But when you step back and look at your growth numbers, something just doesn't add up. You're working harder than ever, your team is exhausted, and yet the growth you are seeing doesn't match the effort you're putting in. Here's what's happening. You're confusing activity with progress. You're treating growth like a to-do list instead of a system. And until you change how you think about growth, you're going to stay stuck in this cycle where nothing you do builds on what came before. Today, we're going to completely reframe how you approach growth for your fintech solution. I'm going to show you why most teams are spinning their wheels, introduce you to a framework that changes everything, and give you practical steps to build growth that compounds instead of resets every month. This is going to be an in-depth conversation, so get comfortable because we're diving all the way in. Now, let me paint you a picture you've probably lived through. You launch a referral program. Maybe you're offering incentives. Maybe you've partnered with influencers. Maybe you're running paid ads to amplify it. For 2 weeks, your download numbers look incredible. The dashboard is green. Everyone on the team is celebrating. Then the campaign ends. The numbers drop back to where they were before. Next month, you're back at square one, brainstorming the next big push. It's like pouring water into a bucket with a hole at the bottom. Here's another scenario. Your marketing team is laser focused on driving awareness and getting people to download the app. Your product team is heads down building features and fixing bugs. Your customer success team is responding to support tickets and trying to keep users from churning. Each team is working incredibly hard, but nobody is talking to each other. Marketing doesn't know what product is building. Product doesn't know what messaging is resonating with users. Now, customer success is seeing patterns in why people leave, but that feedback never makes it back to the other teams. You have 3 groups rowing in different directions and the boat isn't moving forward. The frustrating part is it's not because anyone is slacking. It's not because the team isn't talented or dedicated. It's because you're operating with the wrong framework for thinking about growth. Most fintech teams approach growth as a list of tactics. Run this campaign, send this email sequence, post this content, launch that feature. Check the box, move on to the next thing. But the approach treats every action as a standalone, and standalone actions don't build momentum. Growth isn't a list. Growth is a system where each action sets up the next, creating momentum that builds on itself over time. Think about the journey your users go through. They hear about your fintech solution somewhere, they decide to sign up, they go through onboarding, they start using the product, they either stick around or disappear. But if they stick around, they either become advocates who bring in more users or they stay silent. This is your growth system: acquisition, onboarding, engagement, retention, advocacy. Every fintech has some version of this flow. Now, here is where things break down. Most teams treat each stage as its own separate problem. They run acquisition campaigns without considering whether the users they are bringing in are set up to succeed. They build onboarding flows without connecting them to what actually drives long-term engagement. They focus on retention tactics without understanding why users are disengaging in the first place. But when you think about growth as a system, you start seeing the connections. The right acquisition strategy brings in users who are primed to succeed in your onboarding. Strong onboarding gets them to experience value quickly, so they are motivated to keep coming back. Engagement strategies create experiences worth sharing, which feeds back into acquisition. Each stage sets up the next. The shift you need to make is fundamental. Stop thinking in terms of isolated tactics. Start thinking in terms of how each action creates momentum for what comes next. I want to introduce you to the framework that makes this shift practical and actionable. At IdevaLab, we use the culture triangle. This framework is specifically designed to help fintech teams align every action that they take so that nothing happens in isolation and everything builds momentum. The culture triangle has 3 points: identity, content, and community. Now let me explain what each one means and then show you exactly how they work together to create compounding growth. Identity is who you are as a fintech brand. Now, not just what you do, but why you do it. Your values, your mission, the specific perspective you bring to the problems that you solve. It's the lens through which every decision gets filtered. When your identity is clear, it becomes your decision-making framework. You stop chasing every trend. You stop copying competitors. You build something distinct that attracts the right people and naturally repels the wrong ones. And that clarity makes your acquisition more efficient because you're not trying to be everything to everyone. Content is how you communicate and educate. Every email, in-app message, social post, notification, piece of documentation. It's the vehicle that carries your message and guides users through your journey. When your content is aligned with your identity, it does more than inform. It reinforces who you are at every touch point. It builds trust, it educates in a way that moves people towards value, and it connects the dots between different stages of your growth system. Community is your users understood deeply, not demographics, but real insight into what they need, what frustrates them, what motivates them, and what makes them stay or leave. When you know your community at this level, every product decision and every campaign becomes grounded in reality instead of guesswork. This deep understanding lets you create experiences that resonate so powerfully that users don't just stay, they become advocates. And that advocacy feeds directly into acquisition, creating the compounding loop that you're trying to build. So let me show you how aligning these 3 points creates compounding growth in ways that isolated tactics never can. I'm going to walk you through a real example so you can see exactly what this looks like in practice. So let's say you're a fintech app for small business owners. Through deep community understanding, you discover that one of their biggest pain points is cash flow visibility. They're not just looking for transaction tracking. They're anxious about whether they will have enough money to cover expenses next month, right? Start with identity. Your identity is about empowering small business owners to make confident financial decisions without needing expensive accountants or complex software. This isn't just a tagline. It's the lens through which you make every decision. When someone asks why your app exists, this is the answer. So you build with community insight because you've taken time to understand your community deeply. You know the cash flow anxiety isn't just a feature request. It's an emotional problem that keeps them up at night. So you build a feature that projects cash flow based on their patterns and upcoming obligations. So you're not just building what they asked for, you're solving the underlying problem. Connect through content. Here is where the compounding starts. You don't just build feature and hope people find it. You create content that educates users about why cash flow visibility matters, how it reduces anxiety, and how your specific approach helps them feel more in control. Now that content shows up in multiple places, and each placement serves a different stage of your growth system. Your social content explains the cash flow anxiety problem in a way that reflects your identity. Small business owners who feel this pain see themselves in your content. They're not just engaging with a post, they're recognizing that you understand their world. That's acquisition, but it's also pre-education. When they sign up, your onboarding emails continue this narrative. The first email doesn't just say, here's how to track transactions. It says, most small business owners we talk to feel anxious about cash flow. Here's how we help you see what's coming so you can plan with confidence. You're reinforcing your identity and connecting to their specific pain point. That's activation through relevance. Your in-app messaging guides them to the cash flow projection feature within their first session. The tooltip doesn't just explain what the feature does, it reminds them why it matters. Stop worrying about what's coming. See your projected cash flow for the next 30 days. You are delivering on what your content promised. That's engagement through immediate value. Watch what compounds. Users who resonate with your identity signed up because your content spoke to their specific anxiety. Your onboarding immediately addressed that anxiety. They experienced value with their first session because you guided them to the exact feature that solves their problem. And then they keep coming back because the feature genuinely helps them feel more in control. And here's the critical part, because you solved the real emotional problem for them. They tell other small business owners about it. Not because you asked them to, but because you made their lives meaningfully better. That referral brings in more users who have the same pain points. Your acquisition becomes more efficient because you're attracting the right people. Those people activate faster because your onboarding is designed around their specific needs. They engage more because the product delivers on what your content promised. They retain longer because you're solving real problems. And they advocate more because you've created meaningful value. Do you see the compounding effect? Every stage feeds the next. Your identity attracted the right users. Your content educated and guided them through each stage. Your deep community understanding ensured that you built something they actually needed. And all 3 points working together created a growth loop that builds on itself. This is fundamentally different from running isolated campaigns or building random features and just hoping they work. When the 3 points of the culture triangle are aligned, every action you take strengthens multiple parts of your system simultaneously. Let me show you another angle of how this works. Say you're planning your content strategy for the quarter. Without the culture triangle, you might create generic posts about fintech trends or tips because that's what everyone is doing. You get some engagement, maybe a few downloads, but nothing compounds. With the culture triangle, your approach changes completely. You start with your identity, empowering small business owners to make confident financial decisions, right? And then you consider your community. They are anxious about cash flow, confused about taxes, and maybe overwhelmed by financial jargon. So you create content that communicates your perspective, serves their needs, and connects to your product naturally. One piece of content might be titled, "Why Your Accountant's Advice Isn't Wrong, but Isn't Enough." It reflects your identity by positioning confidence as something small business owners can access themselves. It serves your community by addressing a common frustration, and it connects to your product by showing how real-time visibility empowers different decisions than quarterly reviews. That single piece of content doesn't just drive awareness, it pre-qualifies users by attracting people who resonate with your perspective. It educates them about the problem you solve before they even sign up. It sets expectations that your onboarding can deliver on. And it positions your brand in their mind in a way that differentiates you from competitors who just talk about features. Now, one piece of content designed through Culture Triangle creates compounding effect across awareness, education, acquisition, and activation. That's the power of alignment. So let me give you the practical steps to implement this framework for your fintech solution. First, define your identity with precision. This isn't a tagline or a mission statement that sounds good in a deck. This is a clear articulation of who you are, what you believe about your industry, and what makes your approach different. Write it down. Be specific. What do you stand for that your competitors don't? What's your unique take on the problems you are solving? This becomes the foundation everything else builds on. So if you can't articulate this clearly right now, make it your top priority. Everything else gets easier once this is solid. Second, invest in understanding your community at a deeper level. Stop making assumptions. Talk to users one-on-one, send targeted surveys, analyze behavioral data to find patterns, read through support conversations to understand what frustrates people. The goal isn't just to know who they are, it is to understand what they're trying to achieve, what's standing in their way, and what would make them successful. This insight becomes the foundation for every product and content decision that you make. Third, audit everything through the culture triangle lens. Go through your current growth activities, your content, your product roadmap, and ask 3 questions about each. Does this communicate our identity clearly? Does it serve our community's real needs based on what we actually know about them? And third, does it connect to another part of our growth system, or does it just exist in isolation? You'll find gaps, content that's generic or transactional, messaging that doesn't reflect who you are, product features that solve problems nobody has, campaigns that brought in users who immediately churned because they weren't the right fit, touch points that exist in isolation instead of building towards something. This audit shows you exactly where alignment is breaking down and where your biggest opportunities are. Fourth, redesign your highest impact touch points first. You can't fix everything at once, so start where it matters the most. For most fintech solutions, that's onboarding and your core acquisition channels. So take your onboarding flow. Right now, it probably explains features. Redesign it to communicate your identity, address your community's specific anxieties, and then guide them to their first value moment as quickly as possible. Make sure every email, every screen, every message connects to what comes next. Take your primary acquisition channel, whether that's content, paid ads, or partnerships. Redesign it to attract people who align with your identity and pre-educate them about the value you provide. Stop optimizing for volume and start optimizing for fit. Fifth, measure the compounding signals religiously. Track how many users activate and how quickly. Track retention curves over time. Track how often users engage and whether that engagement increases week over week. Track referral rates and whether referred users perform differently than acquired users. Track lifetime value by cohort. These metrics tell you whether the culture triangle is working. They show you whether alignment is creating compound effects or whether you still have gaps to fix. Use these signals to guide your resource allocation and your strategic decisions. Sixth, create feedback loops between your teams. Remember those 3 islands I mentioned earlier at the beginning? Marketing, product, and customer success all rowing in different directions? Exactly. The culture triangle only works if information flows between them. Set up regular sessions where customer success shares what they are hearing from users. Make sure product knows what messaging is resonating in marketing. Ensure marketing understands what features are driving retention. When these teams operate with shared understanding of your identity, your community, and how your content connects them, that's when compounding accelerates. Let me bring this home with what changes when you actually do this. Before the culture triangle, you're constantly starting from scratch. Every campaign is its own thing. Every product feature is a separate bet. Every piece of content exists in isolation. You're working hard, but nothing builds on what came before. After the culture triangle, everything connects. A user sees your content and recognizes themselves in it. They sign up because your identity resonates with them. Your onboarding delivers on what your content promised. They experience value quickly because you understand their actual needs. They keep coming back because Your product solves real problems. They tell others because you've made their lives meaningfully better. These referrals come in pre-qualified and ready to engage because they've heard about you from someone like them. That's compounding growth, not because you're doing more, but because what you're doing builds on itself. Now, most fintech teams are exhausted because they're pushing a boulder uphill every single month. The culture triangle changes the physics. You're still pushing, but now the hill has momentum and gravity is working with you instead of against you. Ask yourself 3 honest questions. Can I clearly articulate my fintech brand's identity in a way that differentiates us from competitors? Do I deeply understand my community's real needs, or am I making assumptions based on surface level data? Are my growth activities connected and building on each other, or are they isolated efforts that reset every month? If you can't answer yes to all 3, you know where to start. If you found this valuable, hit the like button and subscribe because we release new videos every single week. Leave a comment and tell me which points of the culture triangle you think your fintech needs to strengthen the most. Is it clarifying your identity? Is it understanding your community more deeply? Or perhaps, is it connecting your content across your growth system? And if you want to explore how the culture triangle can create compounding growth strategy for your fintech solution, head on to idevalab.com, that is IDEEVA lab.com, and book a time with our team. We love to have conversations and we can help fintech brands align their growth efforts so every action builds momentum instead of starting from scratch.